Yes, Prashanti garu. Next question is, uh, how about the L1A extension? So do they get 2 year, 3 year, or 1 year? How does it work? Or it's again officer's discretion?
So that's a good question. If your US organization is not a startup, but has been in business, then you initially itself, the initial application is for 3 years. You get 3 years. But if it is a startup, then the initial application you only get for 1 year. And then you have to file a 3-year extension, just like the H1. And then you get another 3-year extension. So totally you get 7. If it's a startup, initially you get 1. If it's not a startup and it has been in business for at least a year, then you get directly 3 years and you can apply for another 3 years and then another 1 year. We are presuming in the interim, people will file the green card because after 1 year after filing the L1, you qualify for the I-140.
Okay, and unlike H1B, they can stay a maximum of 7 years, I believe, right? Instead of 6.
Correct, yes. But for the L1B, Ranjit, it's only 5 years. But for the L1A, it's 7 years.
Oh, okay. And next question is, can they transfer on L1 to another company? How does it work in the US? Let's say if there is a requirement, there's no requirement anymore and they got terminated or for whatever reason or something happened, will they be able to transfer to other organization? What are the options they have?
Yeah, so if you want to transfer to another organization, you'd have to most probably file a change of status to a H1. And you might be subject to the cap. So that's the only way to transfer or move to another company while you're in the US. On the other hand, if you want to file for another L1, then you'll have to leave the country. Remember, the requirement is that you should have worked for the foreign organization for at least a year. So you'll have to leave the country, work for that foreign organization, foreign entity for at least a year, and then again come back through that entity on an L1. So that's the only way of doing it if you want to stay on an L1. But you can't transfer to a different L1 company L1 within the US because that 1 year requirement won't be met.
So they cannot transfer to another company on L1. What are the options do they have? So let's say if they have filed an I-140 and they are, let's say, in the stage of already having an EAD, or let's say they are about to get an EAD and it's past 6 months. So at that point, can they transfer an AC-21 or even that's not possible?
So the AC-21 regulation applies only to H1s, I think. I don't think it applies to L1s, but I will cross-check for you and we can talk about that at the next session. But generally, all the AC-21 regulations with reference to portability, transfer, and I think I'm correct with this, apply only to H1 and doesn't apply to L1. So in an L1 situation, you're pretty much out of luck and you can't transfer to another company with the 485. But the good thing is that you don't have to wait for years and years, right? On an L1, especially an L1A. Yes, L1, L2, when we'll talk about that later. But I mean, L1B is a different story, but L1A is EB1. So the wait is really not that long for them. So usually it works out. They can, of course, change status to a H1, which a lot of people do, because a lot of MNCs don't file green cards. So they change status to a H1 and then they go through the regular process of filing, the I-140, 485, etc., and use the AC-21 provisions to move after 6 months on the I-140 is approved. But with reference to the L1B, it's a different story because L1B you cannot apply for, it's not EB1. You have to file a labor cert and it's EB2 or EB3. So that's a long wait. So people on L1B are usually not happy because neither do they have the portability provisions of a H1 and nor is their processing time commensurate with an EB1 because it's EB2 or EB3. So most L1Bs would rather, I think, change to a H1 because it's kind of difficult to stay for years and years with the same company on an L1B.
Got it. Okay, how about this? I believe they don't need to go through labor certification and all and the perm, so directly they would be applying I-140. Do they have premium, or they don't have premium for L1A I-140?
That keeps changing, and I don't know presently whether they have premium or not. I have to look at the list, but it keeps changing. Like any premium processing, H1s sometimes have premiums. I-140s sometimes don't have premium at all. So that keeps changing. EB1 I-140s sometimes have premium, sometimes don't. So I don't know what the state of affairs is right now, but we'll have to check the list to see whether right now premium is there or not. But in the past, there has been premium for I-140. And that includes not just multinational executives, but they've had premium for I-140 EB1s in exceptional ability and extraordinary ability as well, and national interest waivers as well. So that keeps
I believe
changing.
national interest waiver does
every
not
few
have
months
the
it changes. So you have to always make sure you look at what the present state of affairs is.
So yeah, approximately how long will it take to get a green card for these multinational executives in your knowledge? Right now it's current, I believe. Usually, I believe it's definitely faster than other EB1, EB2, EB3. But what's the usual time frame?
Well, if you don't look at the visa number availability, and let's presume that the visa numbers are current, then they're only looking at processing time, which is the processing time for an I-140, which if you have premium processing now is not 2 weeks anymore, but is 30 days. And then you're looking at processing time for the 485, which is, 12 to 18 months is the processing time. So that is the time period taken. Of course, the I-140 might take longer because even if you do premium processing, there might be an RFE. A lot of EB1 cases, I-140s get RFE'd. So you can expect an RFE. And usually they're a little complicated. So you can expect that will take, additional time for you to respond as well as for them to process it. So, that you can add another 1 month. So maybe there's no RFE about a month. If you do premium processing, if there is an RFE, you can add a month or two to it. So 2 to 3 months, I would say. And if you're not doing premium processing, then maybe 4 to 6 months for the I-140 to get approved.
Okay, let's say when they file the adjustment of status, they can usually they can file most likely concurrent because most of the times they are current. Let's say they are filed concurrently. I mean, is it same like the H1B? They can stay in the country even if the L1 status is expired or L1 visa is expired?
Right. Any 485 you file, it gives you status. It gives you temporary status, allows you to stay in the country, allows you to travel, and allows you to, meaning get advance parole, that's a visa, and allows you to get EAD, allows you to work. So once you file the 485, you are pretty much in status. You don't have to maintain your non-immigrant status if you don't want to.
So, okay, how about the EADs for L1As? Is it like same usual, like 1 year or 2 years again, or do they have any special thing with the EADs?
Again, it's the same thing. You get 1 year extensions on your EADs, and it usually takes 6 months for them to process the EAD. I mean, you can apply 6 months in advance rather, and it might take them 6 months or longer, or usually it takes 1 to 3 months, but nowadays EADs are taking longer. So give it 6 months and apply, you're allowed to apply 6 months in advance. So I would say apply as soon as you can. Just because, biometrics are an issue now, and EAD card production is an issue because of, lack of USCIS pretty much mismanaged their independent contractors, and they don't have anyone producing cards right now. So, or there's a shortage. So apply as soon as you can.
Okay, can you, I mean, now we have discussed about L1A, the green card process and all. Is it same with the L1B? I believe they don't come under EB1, right? So what process or path they have to follow towards the green card?
So they have to file a labor certification like any person who's on a H1 would file. And then they have to, depending on what their job requirements are, So if their job requires a bachelor's plus 5 years or a master's with or without experience, then it would be EB2. They would be able to file in the EB2 category, which is the advanced degree category. If their requirement is a bachelor's with 2 years of experience or less than that, then they would be required to file under the EB3 category. And so the visa numbers, as we all know, are retrogressed. So it's the same as the H1. They would file a labor cert, test the job market, see if any US citizens or permanent residents are available for the job. If not available, then if no resumes come in, or if they're able to disqualify the resumes, then you would file the actual perm, the labor cert, after doing all the ads and doing the recruitment process. And then, of course, you would file the I-140, and depending on whatever they qualify. You can, if they qualify for EB2, you can still file for EB3. You can downgrade, but you cannot go up high at a higher level. You can go to a level below. That's up to the employer what they choose to file as. So if you qualify for EB2, you can file for EB3. That's what the famous downgrading is. But you cannot file for EB1. So that you can't go up, you can go lower. So they would file for an I-140, and once their visa number becomes available, they would file for 485. They could also file if they're working in an area and they're working, for example, in the IT sector or in the business sector, they have achieved something in their professional career, and it is unusual, and they've received awards, etc. Then they could also do EB2 national interest waiver. Then they don't need the employer to support their I-140. They can do it even if their employer is not willing to support it. They can file a national interest waiver. That's only useful if the employer is not willing to do the green card. Otherwise, it's not really useful because the priority date is the same for national interest waiver EB2 versus a regular EB2. So these are the ways in which an L1B can get a green card, pretty much the same as a H1.
Okay, so is this the same thing as like the H1B, like having an I-140 will give them unlimited extensions?
So as I said, the AC21 regulations don't apply to L1s.
Oh, okay.
In that sense. Applies only to H1. So all this portability and extensions, etc., apply only to the H1B category specifically.
Oh, that's the reason most of the L1s prefer going on to the H1B if they are maxing out. They try to.
Right, they transfer, a lot of them transfer to H1.
Okay. Now moving on to a little different topic. We have a couple of questions from offline regarding the I-485 thing. So a lot of people, we are getting offline questions that I-485, when they are filing along with the dependents, they are getting the I-485 receipts with priority date. There's a mismatch of the priority date. Let's say husband and wife has their own I-140. They both filed based on husband's dates, but then when they receive the I-485 receipt, they have their priority date on that. Is that going to be an issue? So will that need to be corrected?
Yeah, definitely. It will be an issue, so it has to be corrected ASAP. So the lockbox or service center has to be contacted depending on where the receipt came from, and the priority date has to be fixed. Otherwise, they will not get their green card when they're supposed to. Oftentimes, we know that there is, when in a husband and wife situation, if the wife belongs to a different country, then the wife's, even though she's dependent, the wife's priority date can be used. That's a different issue than from what you're saying. But, I just thought I'll mention that as well, that cross-country, you can do that and, and get a green card faster. But if it's an issue of both having I-140s, and most probably when you filed the 485, you included both the I-140s, and USCIS got confused and used the, because usually for the 944 or the public access form, we have to we have to submit the dependents I-140 also if they have one. So when you end up doing that, maybe the officer will get confused and use the wife's priority date instead of, the use the dependent's priority date instead of the primary applicant's priority date. And that can cause confusion and slow down your processing time significantly. So make sure that it gets corrected.
One last question before we wind up the show. Few people were saying that, when they file I-485 along with the I-131 and I-765, and for some reason I-765 got rejected because of using a wrong fee amount or checkbox, or, for whatever the reasons. So now I-485, they have the receipt. When they are filing the I-131 or I-765 later, not along with the I-485, will they have to pay the fees, or they are exempt from the fees because I-485
No,
is already pending?
they have to pay the fee. The only time that they're exempt is they file it concurrently with the 485. And Ranjit, another thing I wanted to mention, and I was thinking of mentioning it and I forget, there is an update. I'm hearing that there's a lot of scams going on with reference to immigration. So people are getting emails, and other attorneys have told me that people are getting emails supposedly from USCIS saying that they have not updated their AR11, and one person has supposedly paid 130,000, and I have no idea why they paid, to a treasury account. We don't know where this account is, and then he realized that it was fraudulent. But the emails look very real. I've seen the emails. They have a picture of USCIS logo. It says USCIS. There's a case number. They have the person's passport information. They have the person's A number. So it looks very authentic, and I don't know how they're getting this information, obviously, but there's a lot of scammers out there, and they hack into accounts and get this information. So please make sure that you speak to your attorney and not correspond directly with the USCIS, especially if it is an issue of money or giving any information. They might ask for your social security number. They might ask for funds, whatever it might be. There is a scam, so please be careful with this.